All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Jason with Kentucky Sustainable Living. I've got Shelly with Two Old Crows Homestead, and I've got Forrest Seeley tonight from Vets4Childrescue. I hope y'all forgive me. My voice is kind of crappy. I've been under the weather for the last 4 days. Everything has hit my house, and I'm still recovering. But tonight we've got Forrest, like I said, from Vets4Childrescue. Forrest is going to talk about their organization, what they've got going, uh, all the great things that they're doing. Forrest, I won't steal any of your thunder. I'll let you come in and tell us everything, what your organization's doing, and the awesome stuff that's going on with it.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate you having me on as a guest. And Shelly, I know I haven't got to meet you yet, but I've heard your name many times. So thank you for participating with us as well. I am the executive director for Veterans for Child Rescue. We are a nonprofit organization, and we fight against the human trafficking of children. We have several ways we do this. We do a lot of radio and television and social media, and that's how we educate the populace. We were founded by a good friend of mine, Craig Sawyer, who was a Navy SEAL or a DevGru sniper, SEAL Team 6 sniper. And he and I grew up together, and he one day heard a story about how bad trafficking was in Montgomery County and Harris County, which that's Houston, Texas, and then the cities north of Houston. And that's where we grew up. We grew up north of Houston. And he just was scratching his head going, this is nonsense. He spent his career chasing terrorists in over 60 countries all over the world. And we had this terror that's happening in America. And a lot of people, what they would do is when you talk about trafficking, they always have this over there mentality. It's happening over there, meaning outside of our country. When in fact, it's happening, it's very prevalent in our country. In fact, it's probably happening in your backyard. You just don't know what it looks like. You don't know what to look for. And so our goal is to expose that, to share that knowledge in all shapes and forms. We also run counter trafficking operations with any state or federal law enforcement agency that will allow us to. Some of these law enforcement agencies, they welcome our help. We have put together different game plans that are highly effective. We have a 100% conviction rate. A lot of this has to do with Craig being he was a federal investigator and an air marshal. So he went through a federal investigation program. So we're always talking about burden of proof. We're always talking to district attorneys in various states on what that burden of proof looks like. We are allowed to color outside the lines of law enforcement because we're not law enforcement. So we get to do some things that they can't do, that we're allowed to do, that makes it more effective. And so that's another part of our mission. We do a lot of stuff that is, we don't talk about. There's a lot of investigative work that we don't talk about, mainly because we don't want to give away what we're working on. And people think, well, they don't really understand. I mean, we could spend years on an investigation. And so we're gathering information today and have been for some time that we're working on. Some of that stuff we don't really like to talk about until it's pertinent to talk about it. So our mission is to educate, spread the word, help put away bad guys, wreck the system.
Awesome.
That's a big job.
It is, Shelly. And, one of the things that people ask me, there's a lot of people that ask, what can you do? We do have on our website, if you search, we have a lot of educational material that you can go through. First of all, I say watch Contraland. We released Contraland in 2020. This is a Hollywood level production. It took us 3 years to produce, and that shows how we operate. And this is something you can watch with your family. It's a gut punch, but there's no content that you wouldn't be afraid to show your kids. I think this is important to understand because one of the things that we illustrate is we arrested a deacon of a church. We arrested an Army recruiter and an IRS agent. These are people that you're sitting next to in church or at the PTA meeting or at a sporting event for your kids' baseball, football, or soccer match. So this is important. You think that these people that are honorable people, you don't know, they embed themselves where there's opportunity. And this is a very important thing to do. We do have a program that we've just rolled out called Activate the Church. And basically, you sign up through our website, and we have a person that will contact that church, and they will go through best practices for how you interface with the kids. And I'll give you an example. You do not ever have a class or an event where there's always 2 adults that are vetted in the room at any given time. You never allow an adult. Now, these are people you may know, that you may love, and that you may have broke bread with, you've prayed with, you've gone to the hospital when their grandmother was sick, but you just never know. And I like the idea of keeping everybody honest. So there are different practices and vetting processes that we try to help educate the churches on in that regard. So we do have Activating the Church. So this is, again, a part of our educational process that we like to do. We have our radio show called Defending Our Children. And we're currently on Brushwood Media Network 6 days a week. We're working on a secondary podcast off of that called Defending Our Health. And it's going to be a spinoff of Defending Our Children. We think that health is so important for our children and for their parents, okay? What you have to understand as a parent, you need to practice what you preach. So if you want your kids to be healthy, then you need to practice your eating habits, your sleeping habits, the amount of screen time you have in technology, the work ethic that you have. Don't ask your kids to do something all the time while you sit on the couch watching TV. If you want to mow the lawn, go out there with the weed eater. You let them push the lawnmower, you weed eat. So there are things that we're going to be talking about in that regard. We have another show that we're working on called Wisdom Quest. And this is more of a spiritual show. And we've got probably 20 episodes done. We just haven't distributed yet. And it's really talking about what is your relationship with your Creator? It's not a religious, it's more of a spiritual podcast. So people can say, hey, this is why I think God's real, or this is why I think my Creator's real. This is the relationship. This is how I talk to him. A lot of the younger kids, they don't know how to have a relationship with their Creator. And so this is a conversation I have with a lot of people today, even adults. I've had people, last weekend I was on I went and ran an obstacle course race, and I had somebody ask me, well, how do you talk to God? Because I told him when I'm running in the woods, I talk to God. I said, well, sometimes I talk to him just like he's standing right there. And some of the things that I say, they're tough things. I'm not always nice. I complain. Why is there a purpose for me to fight against human trafficking of children? And it helps me reconcile problems and solutions. And I think it's a great counsel process that you can go through. So to be a better person, to be a better neighbor, to be a better steward to the environment, these are all important things. And so a lot of guys that we've talked to, they don't ever talk about the scripture. They just talk about their relationship with their Creator. So I think that's pretty cool. So those are some basic things. We've got some operations we're currently working on now. I've got a handful. I can't get into the details of those, but we've lately are really starting to get some, not really interest, but traction. We're getting some traction with other areas that we have. These are new areas. We've been working on some existing areas, but there's some new areas of the country that we're focusing on. A lot of people that we're dealing with, they are liking what we do. So really what it comes down to is logistics and scheduling. So you have to get everybody in the right place at the right time and everybody's schedule clear. So that's really good. So that's working out really well. So those are some things that we do. Check out our website. You go to v4cr.org, or you can go to Vets4childrescue.org. And if you want to watch our documentary, you can go to contralandmovie.com. You can watch that for free.
And that movie is amazing, and it's a gut punch for sure. And the biggest thing I liked about it is it's an actually you get to the meat of the matter in a in a way that's not vulgar and stuff like that. So it's appropriate, like you said, the family can watch it. It's not graphic or anything, but it lets you know what's happening without the vulgarity of it. And it's a gut punch, and it's sad to think that stuff goes on, and that's the biggest reason, what y'all are doing is the biggest reason we got involved with y'all, is because we want that to stop. And honestly, we'd like to work you out of a job personally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love that. And beyond this, I think the next job that I would go towards, if we could eradicate this, and this is inclusive to what I'm doing still, is I want our young men and our young ladies, from the time they can walk, I want them to be taught how to behave around adults, around people of authority, how to behave with people of the opposite sex. I want them to learn how to behave people from different cultures. For some reason, we've learned, our kids are learning how everybody is different. It's really strange to me, because when I go look at my kids, I've got kids in college now, but when they were in grade school, I kept telling the teacher, quit teaching my kids to be divisive. You keep talking about these topics, and yet that's making them differentiate each other and creating division amongst them. Instead, you should be teaching them why they should be kind to somebody, why they should help them with their homework, why they should help them in sports, okay? Because you get a lot out of, people don't realize when you're helping or training, and I know that I think y'all have kids that are playing baseball, and when you train your kids, when you're training somebody how to swing a bat, for example, when you train them, what it does is it teaches you to resolve any issues you may have. I find that coaching really helped me out with that. And so if you start them at a young age, and let's say that they're 7 years old, and you've got one child that's really good at picking up, fielding, ground balls. He's really good at it. You talk to him, say, tell me why you think you're good. Tell me what you're doing. And once he understands how to say, I want you to teach Billy over here, he's no good at it. I want you to explain to him how you deal with the ground ball. He goes, well, Billy, he always closes his eyes because he's scared. Well, how did you get over your fear of being scared? But what they're doing as a coach is they're learning how to reconcile. To me, life is about reconciling problems.
Yeah.
Technology is about ignoring problems. When you got a kid in front of a phone, a tablet, and you want him to do a chore, they would rather tune you out and not do that, because they're not learning how to reconcile. And this is funny. I tell the story all the time, Jason, and this is probably the same story you had growing up. I remember I'd go out there, I'm 12 years old, I'd try to start the lawnmower. My job on Saturday morning was I had to mow the lawn, period. Couldn't do anything else alone. So I'm out there trying to start it. It wouldn't start. I go to my dad. He walked out there and pull it one time. It was almost like that lawnmower knew it wouldn't start. Okay. Occasionally he'd go out there and it wouldn't start. He says, all right, here's the deal. You got to figure it out. Whatever the problem is, we'll fix it. Now, we didn't take it to Sears. Yep. I had to troubleshoot the issue, and I couldn't go play. I couldn't go swimming or whatever at the lake. I had to resolve that issue before I could do anything. And I'd figure it out. And spark plug's bad, Dad. We got to go get a spark plug. So he'd drive me to the store, and we'd get a spark plug, and we'd fix it, and I'd get that lawn done. But I always remember those life lessons and how important they were to me. When we built a fort, my dad, they didn't buy us wood. They didn't no, you went and scrounge for it. You'd find a piece of wood. You'd be like, oh, let me look at my fort. Where does it fit? I'm going to get the most use out of it. It was problem solving.
Oh, yeah.
So these are things that I find that are important. So if I didn't have this other job to do, then I would be focusing on how to teach kids and coach them. And then in the meantime, I would also be whispering in the young kids' ears, here, let me explain to you about young girls. Let me explain. Let's talk about their mom and dad. Their mom and dad's king and queen. If they say be home at 12 o'clock at night, you're home at 11:45. I don't care what that girl says. Yep. Okay. Because in my dating years, I had girlfriends that, we could be home at 12:30. I'm like, what'd your mom and dad say? They said midnight. I said, well, no, we're going to be there at 11:45. Because I knew if I pissed off mom, and if I pissed off dad, I wouldn't be able to take that girl out to the movies. Yep. So these are other lessons that I want to teach, that mom and dad rule. Whatever they say goes. And that there's some other things that I won't get into, but on how to be a gentleman. There's a lot of things that I anytime I have a young man, I talk about how to be a gentleman and how important that is. So anyway, I appreciate your thoughts of, I'd love for America to put us out of a job.
Yeah. And that is a lot of kids, and all the younger kids they don't get taught what you're talking about. They don't know how to do any of that. And it's just like some of the people have been talking on, what makes a man. And, the kids don't understand, what you and I know on how to do stuff. The boys especially don't get that anymore. So that's something that's really, really lacking. So
it is. And Shelly, you look like you're thinking about something. I see that there's mama pinwheel spinning.
Well, they've been spending most of their lives on devices and not interacting with people. And I mean, we live in a day and time where by and large, there's not a male presence in the home. And it's just, I don't know, it's causing a horrible decline. Our youngest daughter is in college right now, and actually, like, our three youngest daughters, I would say, I've heard all three of them say this. They struggle finding someone, a boyfriend, a husband, whatever, that's actually a man, or what you and I would classify as a man. And it's just, I don't know. Things have changed. They're not like they were when we were growing up. And I know you're like, I'm to that point in my life where I'm old and I'm saying things aren't like they were when I was a kid or what, and that's fine, whatever. But it's just not. It's really not. The whole idea of toxic masculinity is, every time I hear that, I want to punch somebody in the face or whatever. It's like, who even came up with that? We are two very different beings created to be very different beings, and it's just, it infuriates me that now we have taken, half of the people on the planet and emasculated them. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I will tell you this, and this is a long, long conversation we can have when I come to see you guys. But I think one thing that, I'm raising trying to teach my daughters and anybody else's daughters is, when you become a mother, you've got to be a tough mama. Okay. I didn't fear my dad. I feared my mother. And why is this important? Because mothers spend most of the time with the children. Okay. And my mom basically raised me, and this is what's different about my generation, or our generation, and the other kids. I would have died. Any girl that I took out on a date, I would have died for her. If anything came to her, if anybody tried to harm her, I would have given my life to protect her without thinking. That's just the way we were raised. Okay. So my mother did not put up with anything. I never got backhanded. I got backhanded. I pretty much got away with a lot of stuff. So for the number of times I ever got backhanded, I think the net effect was I was ahead of the game, because every time I got backhanded, I deserved it. There were a few times I didn't get backhanded when I deserved it. But my mother is a wonderful person, and she didn't put up with anything. And why is this important? It's important because the influence that mother has on their kids is, you got to raise your kids. Number one, you got to teach them how to take care of themselves. Number two, eventually you got to teach them to clean and cook, both male and female. You got to teach them how to troubleshoot if there's a problem. Now we got kids, they can't even solve a problem with using, if we had to, could you imagine, we would have built rocket ships if we would have had YouTube when we were kids.
Right.
We would have been dangerous for sure.
We would have been dangerous. Oh my gosh. So, and I think it's very important. And my mom, I would say this, the only time I was afraid of my dad is when my mom said, I'm going to tell your dad when you get home. Because normally I was never afraid of him. But that means I had upset my mother so much that now he was going to step in. It's kind of like it's the relationship between a lioness and a lion. Okay. The lioness, they're fighters. They protect the kids. They do all the hunting. the male lion watches over the herd. He protects mama. But if baby messes with mama, you got to deal with daddy. And that's the kind of thing that I recall. I think this value set is important with our kids, because here's the thing: in today's time, I said I would give my life for any girl that I took out, but I had nothing to worry about. I lived in a small town, an hour north of Houston. We never locked our doors. We spent most of the time outside. I mean, we didn't have bottled water. I used to drink out everybody's water. I could tell you whose house I was going to drink water at by the type of water hose they had. Okay. So, those real skinny ones, they always tasted like rubber. So you never drank out of those. Those were the cheap ones. But today we have all these predators. I mean, we just saw this poor gal in Georgia who was killed by somebody that was crossed the border illegally. And, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So not only do we have to teach our boys to be young men and protectors, we got to teach our girls to be fighters. Okay?
Yeah.
Learn to make decisions before they get into a place where that might get them in a jam. And this is sad. It's really sad because we have propagated in this country, we've allowed this to happen. Now, Shelley, you said something really interesting, and I'm going to go back to talk about this device, the phone. Okay. What is this? This is a drug. What I mean by that is that anything you've got in your brain, anything that you receive pleasure or pain from, you get dopamine. Dopamine comes from the back of the brain. And when you give your kids one of these devices when they're very young, a tablet, a phone, this is getting oversensitized. This is not developing. Your logic chip. Everybody says common sense. I hate that word. It's logic chip. What's logic chip? Jason, I say, we grew up together. I say I say something crass about your sister. You punch me in the face. I never do it again. No. We reconcile that problem real quick, right? Mm-hmm. And then we can be friends. We'd be friends for life, even though I did something stupid and I only did it once. And the good thing is I would never do it to anybody else in our group's sister, right? You learn. But when you don't have that front part of your brain developing and evolving, going back to all the things I talked about earlier, then that's why what we're seeing today is grown adults, young adults in Starbucks and Burger King at the airport throwing a temper tantrum. We're seeing these 18, 19-year-old kids getting pulled over by the police officer and being hauled off because all they asked for was license and registration. Okay. Yeah. So when you ask for license and registration, my parents said, you give it to them. Okay. You give it to them and you just kind of deal with whatever comes out. And it's because this logic chip is not being developed. And one of the gentlemen just commented about that he was works in a prison. He talks about the absentee father and I've heard figures as high as 85% of men in prison were fatherless. They had no father in the home. And that's the other thing. When I talk to younger men, I tell them, hey, when you make that decision to have a relationship, you commit it's a lifelong commitment. You be a father to those children, you be a husband to your spouse. That's your commitment.
Oh. And it is. I think a lot of stuff, like you were saying, your phone, the kids have too much access to phones and screen time, and it is a drug, and they would be way better off those things, and a lot of that stuff would fix itself. I know I'm guilty of it. My youngest one is on his stuff a lot, but most of the time it's days when it's nasty outside or he doesn't feel good, something like that. But a lot of the times when he gets home from school, I'm like, you got about an hour to an hour and a half before it's time to do homework. And especially if it's nice this time of year, I'm like, let's jump out there. I was like, do you want to ride your four-wheeler? He's like, yes. So we fire his four-wheeler up and he tears the property up riding his four-wheeler, or we'll get out and throw baseball, play basketball, do something like that. Anything other than playing with the stupid phone or a screen.
Well, I can tell you one of the best things you can do, and especially if your kids are younger. One thing I did with my kids, I always read to them. But this thing for the younger ones watching, this is called a book. Okay. And if you can incorporate your youngest to start reading, if there's some way you can convince him or incentivize him to start reading. And this is important. This is one thing I want people to understand about being dopamine driven. Okay, let's go back to my first motorcycle that I got. Okay, my first motorcycle I got as a kid, I was 12 years old. No, it was my second. I had actually gotten a used one, but it never really ran. But my first brand new one was an XR75, a Honda XR75. It was a $500 bike. I had to come up with $100 before my parents would buy it. So I spent, and at the time I was getting paid $5 to $7 a lawn, mowing lawns. Okay, I spent, I don't know, probably more than from the spring to summer, and I made all of that. And it was almost like the day that I had $107. It wasn't $100. I had $107. And I took my pile of money and I pushed it on the kitchen table and said, Mom and Dad, look what I got. I was ready to give them all. I didn't keep the $7. I just gave it all to them because I was so proud that I earned that. So I got my motorcycle, but it took me, probably 6 months to earn that. Now, why is that important? I took care of that bike.
Yep.
I washed it. I cleaned it, maintained it. Yeah, I rode it hard. Man, I rode that bike. I rode it hard, but I took care of it. Now, when you're dopamine driven, one of the things it removes from you, I believe, and what I've witnessed, is patience. Patience is so important. We're always in this hurry for instant gratification. And I think there's a byproduct or an addition to patience. And that is, it also removes forgiveness. Now, why is this important? Okay. In the last 5 or 10 years, we've witnessed, because unfortunately the political scene has bled over into in our churches and in our schools and all these areas. And we were kids, we never talked about politics at the dinner table. We didn't talk about them in church. We didn't talk about them at school. I mean, we talk about historical stuff, but not necessarily the current stuff. And so what's happened is we've had this weird thing where it's gotten to the point from we're taking every single person that could be out of it could be an entertainer, it could be a politician, it could even be a minister. Okay, it could be anybody that has an outward facing persona, and you find one thing that they did wrong in their life, and now they're going to hell, they're bad people, they're this or that. And I can assure you, it doesn't allow us to analyze somebody for the sum of their lives. And so I find that very interesting. And I also think it doesn't help people understand what forgiveness is. And I can tell you guys, it's one of the things I struggle with the most. I really struggle with forgiveness because I see things that are really ugly that break my heart. But what forgiveness basically is, it isn't about them. It's about you. When you forgive somebody, you're giving it to God. You're saying, hey, this is your problem. Now, when I do this, I'm not saying that their behavior is okay and that if there's a punishment that is being assigned to whatever is that action is, that punishment will be delivered. That's fine. But you're just saying, hey, I'm not going to carry this. And this is super important because where I've learned this is from survivors. And I've had survivors tell me some things that would, make a lot of people break down, cry, and throw up. And I'm looking at them bewildered when they tell me how they've forgiven. And this is one of the things that I've learned from them. So these devices, I think is a normal function as a society that you have to be able to do. It's how you process information. You have to be able to have logical thought. There's emotion involved. There will always be emotion. But if you are dopamine driven, it'll be an emotional decision. And people that run off of emotion, they go beyond what's acceptable. And it's crazy. When we were little kids, our kids were little bitty babies and they would pitch that temper tantrum and they would throw their head back and they'd be beating their head against the ground. We're seeing that with adults. It's expected on the babies, but it shouldn't be with the adults. And I think that the technology has a lot to do with that. What slows your brain down are reading books.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I used to read all the time, and that's where I found out about Angry American. Chris Weatherman. That's where I found him. Was when I used to read all the time, and I've kind of gotten out of reading, but I need to get back in to reading some more and kind of slow my brain down. Sometimes I have a hard time falling asleep at night now, just because I don't read.
I read. I'm reading a book right now, and it's actually a author by the name of Jack Sacco, and basically his grandfather was basically went on in World War II. He went on D-Day. That was how he entered into the war. He was a communication specialist. He put up all the telephone lines, and so people says, well, that doesn't sound dangerous. So here you are, you're in the middle of a battle, and the guy up on the telephone pole where everybody could see you is doing this. It's certainly, what I'm finding out is these guys were real men under great duress in the heat of the night or in the middle of a battle. They were running lines. Line gets cut, they got to go parse it back together. And it's a very interesting story. He was there when Patton delivered his speech, his famous speech.
Oh, wow.
He actually even Patton, there's even an excerpt in there where they're up there doing their work in the middle of a battle, and Patton drives his Jeep right up there, and he just, I'm not going to repeat how he says it, because Patton, when you're a man of war in the middle of a war, your language is a little spicy, but he was just very proud of these men and what they were doing. And I can't remember exactly. He was basically saying, private, aren't you afraid, or soldier, aren't you afraid that the enemy could see you? And, I don't remember what the retort was, but it was pretty funny. But anyway, it's a great book. I don't have, it seems like to me to read, it's very difficult sometimes. So I try to take, when I take a break, I'll read a little bit at a time. I'm about halfway through on this book, but it's a great book. I've got a couple of other books on my list I've had sent to me. As soon as I get done with that, then there's a couple other books that I read that are very important. One of them is called The Citizen. Now, you guys might like this, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. And this is a friend of ours named Boone Cutler. He wrote this book. But if you really want to understand what's going on in society, he's got two versions of it. It was written by Boone Cutler and General Michael Flynn. Great book. Okay. I've read this one. I haven't read the second one. I got to read that. That's next.
That does look like a good book. I might have to pick that up. What's it called?
It's called The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare, and this is session 1. And what it does, okay, so for those of you that are listening that were in the military, it's written like a field manual, and basically it has no political affiliation. It's written like a field manual, so you can understand what's happening in today's society with our political system, with our media. Volume 2 is on AI, on artificial intelligence. So as soon as I get done with this book, I'm going to jump to that one. Haven't read it yet. But these are it's good information, because what you find out is you read it and you say, well, I've experienced that, and you didn't realize you've experienced that, on how you're being manipulated. Yeah. Everybody, no matter who you think you are, everybody is being influenced by whatever their beliefs are, by whatever content they take in. Everybody is being manipulated. Now, some of it is good. Some of it is for good. And I'll give you, it's not self-serving. There are people out there that try to deliver information. I mean, for you guys, one of the things that you do is that you're teaching people how to prepare in case something bad happens. That's important. Okay, that's good information to know. So what they've done is they've put together this book so they can provide you with the information. And then whenever you're looking at any kind of news, you could try to decipher what's good about that news and what's bad. What's funny is we'll see conflicting news articles or broadcasts or social media posts. They'll be conflicting. So then it gets real interesting on how to figure out what information is valid. In our world, we do this in our space as it pertains to trafficking. Okay, good. We do a lot of intelligence gathering, and I can tell you some of it's hard because, these type of criminals, they're not doing taxes, they're not reporting their events. So some of the numbers we have are pieces that are brought from different agencies, both private and government agencies. But there's fallacies in some of those numbers too. And I'll give you an example. Runaways. When they're tracking runaways, there are a lot of runaways that leave their home. They get reported, they get picked up, they get put back into their home, and then they run away again. That doesn't look like one runaway. It looks like two. And you could just have a rebellious kid. And there's a lot of rebellious children or kids out there that leave. So they may run away 5 times in a year. So that's reported as 5 different events. And so we have no way of boiling that information down. But that's just one example of the data that we deal with. I could tell you this, though. I could pick a busy place in a metropolitan area. I could take a survivor with me, which I've done, and they can, in a very short period of time, they can start pointing out problems. Oh, that looks sketchy. Let me tell you why. That looks sketchy. Let me tell you why. Because they know the game. They've been on the other end of that game. Okay, they've been trafficked. And trafficking, there's a lot of layers to that. Everybody thinks it's one thing. Well, I've known people that they were taught to be grifters. I mean, they were not only were they doing, I hate to say it, unmentionable things for money, but they were also grifting, or they were out there begging for money. They were selling magazines. They were door to door at the corner store, you name it. And so when you get somebody that's been through those things, they can find it. So we know it's heavy duty, and it was estimated in 2020 to be $38 to $50 billion in the United States alone. Okay, $150 billion worldwide. And so this is greater than all pro sports. All right. So if you look at pro sports, I live in Houston, Texas, and I've got a plaque with a bunch of, game cards for the Houston. I got some Houston, Texas jersey. I've got a couple of signed helmets from Roger Staubach. I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I was when Roger Staubach was there. So I have evidence of pro sports. I can walk around town. There's evidence. So even college, you go to Kentucky. Kentucky's a great basketball state. There's evidence on people's cars. And to think that the trafficking of kids is greater than that, the dollar value, but you don't know what you're looking at. And that's what really kind of blew our mind, because Craig had heard this information from somebody from the intelligence community. So this person that he heard it from was a legend in the intelligence community. So his information was very well vetted. So, that's the thing that drives us, is that we understand how big it is, how prevalent it is. It's a complex issue. We truly believe that in society that we are all going to have to fight to right this problem as a community, in the neighborhoods, in the cities, the towns, the states, at every level. And it really breaks my heart because we know there are a lot of people complicit that shouldn't be complicit. It's not, if you watch Contraland, go to contralandmovie.com, it's not, in your mind, you think, okay, that bad guy, this is what he looks like. You have a predetermined image of what that person looks like. What you find out is they look like you and me. And I mean, you could just take that, the coach that was the U.S. Olympics gymnast coach. He was a trusted person. And then it came out, who was complicit with that? I mean, look, Shelley, let me ask you a question. Let's say your daughter was an athlete and I was the doctor. And I said, look, I'm going to examine your daughter. I need you to step out of the room. Mm-mm. What would you do? No way. No way. So you would be like, why are you even asking me this?
Right.
There should be another nurse. There should be a team of people in here managing the protection of this child. And under what, I'm not a doctor, but in my mind, I should be checking knees, legs, joints, elbows, shoulders, those sort of things. Mm-hmm. I'm not a doctor. There may be some weird thing that you have to get into the nether regions of a female to examine them. But yet this was going on for who knows how, for years on the U.S. Olympic team. And so the parents were duped. The governing body of the U.S., they were duped. This is wrong. And so if it's happening there, where else does it happen? If it can happen there, it tells you it can happen anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's so prevalent. And the statistics or whatever that says that the United States is the number one consumer of this business. And if that's the case, if you're not doing something to actively fight against it, you're condoning it. I mean, that's just my opinion of it. If you're not, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. It's in every town, every city. Happens with, I mean, all the way from pornography up to actual horrible stuff. It's everywhere. So if you're not actively doing something to fight against it, you're allowing it to happen. It's ridiculous.
You're making a great point. And when I talk about our policymakers, there are 4 positions that when I look at a policymaker and their responsibility as the leaders of our communities all the way up to the top, there's 4 positions that they can hold as it pertains to child trafficking. Because I believe child trafficking is a currency of evil. Okay. And there are those 4 positions, either A or 1, you're ignoring it, which you have to be an idiot to do that. Number 2, you're benefiting from it.
Right.
Number 3, you're participating. Or number 4, you're leveraged by it. Okay. So what's interesting is we do have legislation that's on the books. And I had a conversation with one of the attorneys at the state attorney general's office in December. And he said something that was really interesting. And this is something that people do not understand in society. And I'm by no means a legal expert. So I'm just going to tell you what I gleaned off of my conversation. He said that they have really strong anti-trafficking legislation in Texas. But when you charge somebody with trafficking versus other charges, because what they do is they stack them, the mandatory sentence to be served on child trafficking is significantly higher. The mandatory minimum is significantly higher than these other charges. So what happens is they try to negotiate on the lesser charges. And what I believe is that our court systems, our district attorneys, they never want to go to court. They don't want to risk going to court. Now, I often wonder, does it have to do with they don't have no real control over the jury that they're going to get? Because everybody I hear talks about how they want to get out of jury duty. Okay. Or so that basically what you're saying is we don't want to fight for anti-trafficking. We will get them on another charge and it'll be a lesser charge and they'll be out doing it again rather soon. So it's not an easy problem to, and the reason I suspect that is I listen to a lot of crime drama podcasts and I hear the same thing. There's a lot of people that do these horrible things and they get convicted and they're like, oh, okay, so 5 years for that. And by the way, one of the men on ContraLandMovie.com, there was a 74-year-old deacon of a church in Utah. Mm-hmm. They let him out early. He's out now. And one of his family members contacted us and was upset about it. Okay, his own family member was upset about it. And so he got like 4 years. I mean, he was charged a lot longer, but he only served like 4 years. And the judge wrote in his release, he didn't feel like this man could do any more harm. Well, he showed up with, some gifts and some Viagra and some condoms to have sex with a minor. So, it's, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. So anyway, I agree with you. There's somebody just put on here, our government is profiting from it also. And they absolutely are. We've interviewed people on our radio show defending our children. We've interviewed several people that have been whistleblowers that have testified to that on record. So yes, there is that.
Well, I mean, it's corrupt from all the way up to all the way down because of all the stuff that happened with, the guy that I won't say his name because chances are we would get knocked off of here or whatever. But I mean, nothing's going to ever come of that. They're not ever going to convict the people who are on that list or rode on that plane or whatever. We're never going to hear that. So I don't know. It's just frustrating. It just pisses me off.
By the way, we interviewed a Nathan, and I'm so bad with names on Monday. Mondays are tough for me for some reason, but it just aired Friday, so it should be on our podcast show. And he has a website called, and I don't want to say his name. It's his name, Justice for or his name Justice. Anyway, it's on our website under our episodes. Anyway, and he was the gentleman that he had released the list. He actually did he wrote an article on, there was a couple of guys in Nebraska that were doing the same thing before that guy, hit the radar. This guy is a four-mode expert, and we had a great conversation with him about a week ago. So I encourage you to go listen to that. But I will tell you this: him, along with several others, they are trying to get something done on that. Now it's a tough hill to climb, but the best thing you can do is go listen to those episodes, share them, so people. Here's the bottom line, Shelley: is we got to get mad, we got to get angry, we've got to demand that our policy makers do what we've elected them to do, and that is to represent the people, to protect our children. Okay, these are the next generation of leaders, and we need to teach our kids. One thing that I'm talking to my kids about is doing better than what we're doing today. I talk about the problems that they have to resolve, and I try to give them information that will help them. In the future, this is what you have to do, and hopefully, I am providing them with good instruction that my Creator, I believe, He's giving me to share with them.
Right.
And
well, if you all want to help with this, if you all feel as compelled as Jason and I and Forrest do to eradicate this, you need to come to our dinner. You need to come to the Kentucky Sustainable Living, Homesteading, and Preparedness Festival on March 23rd and 24th. Saturday night, we will have our charity dinner that all of the proceeds go to benefit Vets4childrescue. The tickets to the dinner are $250. It's a prime rib dinner, really good food. Obviously, you're not paying $250 for a prime rib dinner, though. You're paying to help save kids. So come on out and join us Saturday night. You're going to get to sit with all of our speakers, hang out with them. We have an auction that we do. It's going to be a great time. You're going to get to talk to all of our speakers and everything, a one-on-one, pick their brain about anything, any questions you have about homesteading or preparedness. It's going to be a good time. We had a fantastic time last year, and we're able to raise almost $11,000 for Vets4childrescue. We would like to do that again. So come on out and support that venture.
And I did get word today that there will be some good wine and some good bourbon and good tequila too.
Tequila too. There you go.
Yeah, I got word on that today. The lady called me. I've been talking to. She's like, I have wine, good tequila, and good bourbon for you. And I was like, sweet. So
you can get all of the information about the dinner at KentuckySustainableLiving.com. But I highly suggest that you go to Vets4childrescue, their YouTube channel, and check out Contraland. That show, I don't know. I don't want to say it blew my mind. Like, I know this stuff is going on, but it is a very good look at things that you may not even realize are happening, and they're totally happening. So go check out that movie and do something to help.
Indeed. And you, at the very least, just to wet your whistle, go to YouTube, type in Contraland trailer, watch the trailers, a little over 2 minutes. When you watch that, that will give you a taste of the documentary. And I think it will encourage you to not just put it in your queue. And I tell people, have a watch party. Have your family over. Get your youth group at the church.
Do it at your church because it's clean. I mean, it's not vulgar. It's not going to be I started to say it's not going to be offensive. The whole thing is offensive, but it is something that you can watch with a youth group. Do it at your church. Let people need to know. They just need to know.
It's cleaner than most of the stuff that's on TV, honestly.
Yeah.
And if you do that, get a picture of the event, get a couple of pictures, load it on social media, tag us, and we'll spread it out. We'll say, hey, we'll send out a shout out. Thanks for doing this. We want more and poor people to watch the movie and be educated.
So, Forrest, what can you leave everybody with? We're coming up close to an hour. Tell everybody where they can find you. Y'all got your website, YouTube. Tell everybody where they can find you and kind of any last words that you've got.
Okay, you can find us at Vets4childrescue.org. That's the easy way is V for, that's Victor, number 4, Charlie, Rango.org, V4CR.org. You go there. If you click at the top, at the very top banner is to our radio show, Defending Our Children. You can scroll around the menus and you can look and see our educational material as well. To watch Contraland, you can go to contralandmovie.com. You can also search for it on Google as well, and you can watch it there. It's on a lot of the platforms, Rumble and True Social, and even on TikTok. I think we played pieces of it on TikTok. So you could do that. I do highly recommend you check out our radio show. There's a lot of different content that you can listen to educate yourself. We always have a guest speaker. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm interviewing Chris Beck. Chris Beck was a Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6 specialist. And what's interesting about Chris is he actually knew Craig. He was behind Craig. Craig was on SEAL Team 6. He was a few years behind Craig, but he kind of talks about how a lot of people wanted to be like Craig because Craig was highly disciplined. Okay. Craig came up with a game plan to move to SEAL Team 6 because they were both actually on SEAL Team 1. They started out on SEAL Team 1, they went to SEAL Team 6. But Chris had gotten his degree, an engineering degree, before he went to the SEAL Team. So he's like big brain. We totally nerd out about stuff. You know, I'm sending him pictures and information on tech, some of the tech that we're using, and he's making recommendations on tech that we use. But we're interviewing him. It'll air on Friday. And one thing to note about Chris, and this is why this is important, he was the only Navy SEAL that transgendered into a woman, and he detransgendered. So what's important is that if you go and listen to what he has to say, there's some things that he could share with you on how he was convinced to make this change, working with government agencies. Okay. And the brainwashing and the techniques that were used on him. And he shared. And by the way, he made this cross. He made this. It's made out of a bastard file, from a large bastard file used to file horses. And he made this for me. And so I try to wear it everywhere I go. I've had this, I don't know, for almost a year. So
that's cool.
Yeah. Like I said, I talk to him probably weekly now. I've just started talking to me and we kind of lost touch. I've been talking to him a lot. So I look forward for that interview. He'll be on, and I recommend you guys go wait for that one. It'll release on Friday, and then it'll be on our podcast.
Awesome. And also, y'all got cool swag. Tell everybody you can get T-shirts.
We
hats.
do. We've got hats. We got bandanas. Here's my hat. We got these cool shirts. We have wristbands. We've got some visors. We're currently, there's a couple things we're working on, but we've got plenty of swag that we really like. All the proceeds go back into the organization. Our pricing, I think, is pretty reasonable for the stuff that we sell. And we're grateful. We got a really good team that works on that. We got some cool jerseys. Kim, who is our social media person, she designs our jerseys. And if you go to our website, these are a different material. They're not cotton, whatever the opposite of cotton is. I can't even remember. But they're super durable. They're real durable. They're made like that jersey material, and cool graphic. But check out our jerseys.
Awesome. All right, Shelly, where can everybody find you?
You can find us at twoldcrowshomestead.com, and we have a YouTube channel, Two Old Crows Homestead. check it out.
And that'll leave me. You can find me, Kentucky Sustainable Living, on YouTube. You can find Shelly and I, the festival website, KentuckySustainableLiving.com. Guys, if you're really wanting to get into this and help a great organization out, go to the website, buy some tickets, come to the charity dinner. We're going to have great food, great fellowship. You're going to get to sit down with the speakers, the demonstrators. Forrest is going to be there, hopefully with one of his people that works with them on the operations. But guys, we really hope that you can be there, and I appreciate everybody watching tonight, and we will see y'all on Thursday.
Bye.